This video is not intended to replace your current vet's recommendations. We're not looking to treat, prescribe, diagnose anything. Instead, what we're going to share with you today is the latest research and a culmination of Dr. Besson's over 30 years of real world experience with real pets that have suffered from these as a resource and a tool for you to share with your vet, nutritionist, etc. So let's jump right into it. Prescription pet foods. And what are some of your general concerns, Dr. Besson, with prescription pet foods, traditional prescription pet foods on the market today?
Yeah, but let me start with the fact that I give kudos to the prescription diet folks that they were one, and Science Diet Hills was one of the first to really say that nutrition mattered and that nutrition for sick animals is different than nutrition for a healthy, vibrant animal. The downfall is, as time went on, corporate greed became involved, and instead of using good, vibrant, healthy food, they were able to reach the same nutrient parameters that are really important for a sick animal, but they did it with really poor quality ingredients. So I'm totally with them on the concept that food really, really matters. And we've all learned that it matters well for supporting health and wellness, but it even matters more when they're sick. And that's when they really, really need clean, wholesome, whole food with the synergistic effect of all the vitamins, the minerals, the antioxidants, the phytonutrients that you would get from whole food. And I think that that's where prescription diets have really fallen short. And I felt that we could do better. There's no question we could do better.
Yeah. And, I couldn't agree more. And I think a lot of people following me think that I am anti-prescription pet foods because I'm typically not a big fan of big pet food. But I agree with you wholeheartedly in that they do serve a purpose and their initial intention was wholesome. At least that's my perception of it. And there are dogs and cats even that are seeing, how do I say this, better results by being on these foods. I think where my concern is, and I'm excited to deep dive, is, are these really treating the root issue? And are there, and I think this is most important, which I'm really excited to talk soon about Medicus veterinary diets in a moment, but are there more what we would call species appropriate or biologically appropriate whole food ways that we can get to the same health results in compared to these traditional prescription diets? Like, are there better ways, more natural ways? And that's what I'm really excited to talk about. So I guess what are some of the specific maybe ingredients that were a little alarming for you when you were looking into these prescription pet foods?
I would say that we as social influencers, yourself, as holistically minded veterinarians, have really brought home the message that whole, fresh food matters. And that if we're going to support health and wellness, that is absolutely the way to do it. But then we kind of didn't have anything for when our animals got sick. So how many times does our pet parent feed fabulous, healthy food, their dog's entire life, and at the end they develop kidney disease, and their vet, who, God bless their vet, they have no other tools. They say, here's this bag of heavily processed kibble that now you need to feed. And you're afraid. And so most pet parents walk away. They buy it. They walk away. They look at the ingredient deck and go, what was I thinking? How did I get talked into this? And here's the bad part. When you look at the ingredient deck for a carnivore, it's corn gluten meal and sorghum and wheat and soy. And it's the idea that protein from plants are equally digestible as protein from animals. And that is absolutely not true. That the digestibility of meat protein is much greater than plant protein. So the problem is you look at that bag of prescription food and go, this is against everything I believe, everything I've done for the last 14 years. But what else do I have? I have nothing else. I could try to do a home cooked diet, but I'm already stressed enough because my animal is sick. And so now to try to go down that bunny trail and come up with a good diet that really fits the nutrient profiles, that's hard to do. And that's kind of where we came in with Medicus veterinary diets, and me as a veterinarian. As a holistic veterinarian for all these years, what I saw is that animals who ate well healed well.
Mm.
And I have this wonderful client. Her name was Joanne, and she would come in with her dog, and her dog for breakfast would have a smoothie, and it would have blueberries and strawberries and flax and omega-3s, and she's smoking a cigarette, eating a Snickers bar. But her dogs lived vibrant, fabulous, healthy lives. So we needed to take it that next step further and provide that same level of nutrition for when they need it most. So when you look at the Medicus diets, rather than being corn and wheat and soy, and it's real ground beef, and it's cranberries and blueberries and krill as an omega-3 source. So let's give everything that those sick animals need. Let's give them everything they need to be able to build health again.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And before we jump into, because I want to show those watching the ingredients and the differences between Medicus and talk about really what that is. But you mentioned something that I do see some controversy on, which is that dogs are carnivores. I am right with you, right? Scavenging or facultative carnivores. But there is, especially in the conventional veterinarian world, there's this I would call misnomer or maybe misunderstanding that and popularly growing belief that dogs are actually omnivores. Because as I've been told by a few conventional veterinarians, that dogs have evolved to digest the simple carbohydrate, lower quality carbohydrate ingredients. Can you tell me your thoughts on that?
Well, one, I would say if you looked at the anatomy and the physiology of a dog, there's no question that they're carnivores. We're omnivores, and we don't really have sharp pointed teeth.
Yeah.
You have beautiful teeth, but they're not sharp and pointed for ripping and tearing like a dog is. So I would say that they are scavenger carnivores that are able to upregulate their amylase production to be able to tolerate the nutritional abuse that we do. And part of that is look at the amount of pancreatitis that occurs in kibble-fed dogs. Kibble-fed dogs have a tremendous amount of pancreatitis. And if you look at the levels of amylase that they produce, those dogs produce crazy amounts of amylase compared to a dog who's fed a species appropriate diet that is fed more meat content. They have much, much lower levels of amylase. And what I think happens is you can push and push and push the pancreas so far until it's been inflamed for so long that it doesn't function anymore. And that inflammation is seen either as acute pancreatitis, so severe abdominal pain and vomiting, and it's horrible. Chronic pancreatitis, which is kind of that chronic sensitive stomach animal, or in dogs and cats particularly, you'll see it as diabetes because insulin is released from the pancreas. And the incidence of diabetes is epidemic, as you have said. And why is it? Because it's chronic poor nutrition. So I would say to that veterinarian who says they've evolved, I would say that they're able to tolerate the nutritional abuse that we do because they can upregulate their level of amylase.
That is so powerful, what you just said, and I think is going to open the eyes of many, many pet parents because, one, I couldn't agree more, and two, I think it's really important to acknowledge, like, how advanced and uh, uh, strong. I'm trying to losing train of thought track, but how well, there we go, how well dogs are able to take whatever we give them, whether it's feeding them a diet of, equivalent to McDonald's every day, or it's a whole food diet, that they're able to take that, as you call, and I love this term, I might have to take it, nutritional abuse, but still derive some of the nutrients from that. And I think that's what confuses a lot of people. Is I see this in my comments quite often, which is, well, my neighbor's dog lived to 15 years old and they ate Alpa or Gravy Train, or, the lowest quality kibble. And, my response, well, my internal response to that is, that's great, but I think it goes to show how powerful our dog's metabolic and digestive system is to be able to adapt to that, and to be able to derive the nutrients, macro and micro, that they would need to live that length. But then internally, and I wouldn't want to say this to shame or make anybody feel bad, but my thought goes automatically to like, wow, that dog probably has some great genetics. Maybe it exercised a lot. And could it have gotten a few more years, maybe even to live to 20 or 25, had it been fed a real whole fresh food diet?
Exactly. And I would say that the quality of life as well,
Oh,
because
yeah.
we don't see young dogs. They tolerate it well, right? Young dogs still have beautiful coats. They still run around and are fabulous, but it's everyday chronic poor nutrition eventually takes its toll. And eventually, when they're 6, 7, 8 years of age, now you start to see diabetes and obesity and all sorts of other metabolic chronic diseases that fascinatingly we see in people too.
Mhm.
So, all the things that we see in people with chronic poor nutrition, we absolutely see in our animals as well. And no animal is more nutritionally abused than cats. Domesticated cats are, they cannot upregulate their amylase. They have to have protein and they have to have amino acids to literally be able to survive. So I think it's about you're absolutely right about the genetics, because you can have, I can cite a human being who lived to 105 and she ate garbage,
Yeah.
ate high fat or meals that you wouldn't recommend, but their genetics are fabulous. But it's really about what is average. You put up that slide just a little bit ago about the amount of obesity that we have in our pets today. And it's crazy. 1 out of 2 pets are considered obese. 1 out of 2 dogs develop cancer. That's crazy by the age of 10. How many gut issues have happened? I mean, all of those things, you can't ignore them.
Yeah.
Like, and the solution is so simple that you and I are screaming it to the mountaintops
Yeah.
because it's so simple. To me, what I find crazy is that we're even talking about this.
Yeah.
Like, why do we have to make the case for healthy, wholesome food?
Yes.
That's absolutely crazy that we have to talk about it. I'm hoping that 20 years from now, they're going to look back at your podcast and go, what are those ladies talking about? Who would do that?
Yeah. It's so funny you say it's funny. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I had an interview yesterday with Angela Ardolino of CBD Dog Health, holistic pet health expert. And we were talking about the research done on these prescription kibbles and these kind of big pet food kibbles. And she just stopped me. She's like, why do we need research? Why do we need research to demonstrate and show that real fresh foods are optimal for dogs? So on that note, let's just jump into the solution. Let's talk about Medicus. So you are founder, formulator of 3 incredible brands, all of which I love, and am wildly excited about. One being Medicus Veterinary, which are what I will describe as therapeutic diets for these common conditions and diseases that we've been talking about: cancer, kidney disease, severe skin issues. And these are made with whole food options, and we'll go into deep dive with that. You also have created Simple Food Project, which is a real whole food, complete and balanced diet. It's great for an everyday diet. Let's say your dog is healthy today, and you want to keep them that way. And then finally, an incredible site through Herbsmith where there are pet safe supplements. So where you do actual recommendations when people put in information about their dogs, which I think is pretty great. So let's start with Medicus and talk about what this is. You already gave a little bit of your background of why you started this, right? Because we wanted better options on the market with whole foods. But let's talk a little bit about this line that you've fairly recently launched.
Yes, yes. It's been in the works for many years, about 10 years. And I've collaborated with many holistic veterinarians, many nutritionists. But the basic idea behind Medicus is that yes, an animal with a disease needs a nutrient profile that lightens the load on the disease. So in kidney failure, for example, once the kidneys are starting to fail, they can't process phosphorus properly. So normally they would excrete it in the urine. Well, because the kidneys are failing, they can't excrete it. So what happens is it just keeps building up in the blood and building up and building up. And then eventually it starts to affect all of the muscle throughout the body, all the bones throughout the body. And this whole cascade of badness continues. And then it even pounds the kidneys more. So what therapeutic diets do is lower the phosphorus level, which is lightening the load on the kidney. So now the kidney doesn't have to worry about excreting all this phosphorus that it can't do. We can feed them a lower amount of phosphorus, which lightens the load on the kidney. The difference is, I think you need to do that with real food. And you can hit the exact same phosphorus levels with a good food diet versus with poor ingredients. And that is the absolute difference between Medicus and regular therapeutic diets.
So let's look at an example together. I've pulled up a graphic here for those of you watching, for those of you listening. I'll link all of this down below, and all of the things that we're talking about will be linked below as well. But I pulled this up from Royal Canin's website, their ingredient deck, and then compared to your ingredient deck. And for those of you, you don't need to have a degree in nutrition or even have your DVM to be able to look at this and see a pretty incredible difference in the simplicity of the Medicus diet for kidney support. And I say simplicity in a good way. It's using whole food ingredients. I mean, just looking at the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ingredients, you have beef, beef liver, beef kidney. But if I look at Royal Canin's, just as an example, the first ingredient is brewer's rice. You have corn in the first 4 ingredients twice. You've got gluten. You have vegetable oil, which is highly inflammatory. You have natural flavors, which any of you watching or have followed me know that I'm not a big fan at all of natural flavoring because it's unregulated. It can mean a multitude of things. And then you see a whole host of these just overly processed synthetic ingredients. What are some other things that you'd like to point out on this ingredient deck that maybe I'm not even noticing?
Boy. This goes back to the idea that you can get protein from plants and you can get protein from animal products. So that's protein from plants, and that if you heavily process that, it's more digestible to a carnivore with a shorter GI tract. Can you throw it back up there again, Rachel?
Yeah.
So when you go down that ingredient deck, chicken fat is second. That's crazy. And then corn gluten meal, dried beet pulp, natural flavors. And you know when it's natural flavors, that's way at the bottom. Powdered cellulose. That's basically sawdust. Mm-hmm. And then all of the rest that are all down there are the vitamins and minerals and amino acids that are added back in because there's not good nutrition in the top 10 ingredients.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's highly extruded, right? It's a highly extruded, ultra processed food, which means it goes through several rounds of cooking, high temperature, that can deplete protein, which is probably one reason they use plant ingredients, although I'm sure it's cost driven. And it can denature nutrients, which is why I'm assuming that they add in all of these vitamin synthetic packs, because everything is cooked out. Would you agree?
I would say that it's cooked out, but wasn't there to begin with.
True.
So
Fair.
powdered cellulose is sawdust. So
Yeah.
you better add some vitamins and minerals to it because you're not getting any from the sawdust itself. So
Fair.
yeah, I would say that it's that whole approach. And why is that ingredient deck available to even be sold to animals for animal consumption is craziness. But the reason it is it makes a very inexpensive product.
Right.
So now those veterinary diets have tons of money to spend on big trade show booths and lots of advertising and tons of giveaways and tons of freebies for veterinarians. And everybody and their brother is getting a piece of the pie. But who's suffering? The animal and the pet parent who is saying, what else can I do? What else is available? So when you look at Medicus, it's real healthy food. It's beef and rice and eggs and beef liver and beef kidney, sweet potatoes, ground krill, blueberries, beets. I mean, it's all good, wholesome nutrition. And then we did have to add some B vitamins, but the B vitamins were mainly from the process. Not that the ingredients didn't have the B vitamins, but when you freeze dry, B vitamins are very fragile. And so B vitamins tend to get broken down during freeze drying. So we're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater and saying that we wouldn't add any vitamins. We're making sure that it's as balanced and provide all the nutrients that are absolutely necessary, including phytonutrients and antioxidants. I did want to say one thing though, which was like really a tough moment for me. And it was when I was formulating these, and I figured out that in order to get the phosphorus level as low as I needed it to be, I had to add rice. Now that was against what I thought, but phosphorus, the highest levels of phosphorus are in meat. And so if you're feeding a species appropriate diet to a dog with kidney failure or a cat with kidney failure, by nature of those ingredients, you're feeding too much phosphorus. So I had to add rice, not because it was a cheap filler, not because it was added for a very specific purpose. And the very specific purpose was we need to make sure the phosphorus level was lower, because there is lots and lots of plethora of solid scientific research out there showing that dogs that eat lower dietary phosphorus, they live longer, more vibrant lives. They absolutely do better. So that was super important. So we added rice because we needed to get the phosphorus level low. But here's what I would also say is my objective with Medicus is not that they stay on it for the rest of their lives, which is what happens now. If you have a cat with a bladder condition, you put them on CD diet and they never get off that. That is not what should happen. You should use a therapeutic diet with its great restriction in nutrients for a short time period. Help the body out, get them as healthy as possible. Now let's start to switch them back to a complete and balanced diet. And then the kidney diets and the bladder diet, they are by prescription. And the reason they're by prescription, even though they're healthy, vibrant, whole food, they're by prescription because we know that the nutrients are so restrictive that they're not for a healthy animal. A healthy animal needs more phosphorus. And these are very phosphorus restricted. Can you show that the chart that we were looking at?
This one?
Yes, that's a great one. So we compare it kind of the basis behind this is nutrients really matter, and we all agree with that. So phosphorus for a kidney patient is the most important. And you can see that the Medicus kidney support diet, the phosphorus level is 3.8%. For KD, it's 0.33. For Purina NF, it's 0.34. For Blue Buffalo kidney support, it's 0.37. So you can see that we hit the exact same nutrient profiles that are absolutely necessary for an animal with a disease, but we do it with whole food rather than terrible ingredients.
That's powerful. So first off, thank you for doing this because I have been talking about my disappointment in the current options for within the prescription or veterinary diet food category for a long time. And when I saw this come out, I think last year, I believe you launched last year. You've been working on it for years, but it became available. My mind was blown because this, I think, is going to completely turn the veterinary diet category and market on its head in a good way.
Yes.
And I think this is not think this is showing big pet food. This is showing big pharma that, as you said, you can achieve the same results needed to address the medical health concern of the dog, let's say phosphorus, for example, or cats even, with real whole foods.
Yeah, they know it. If you talk to the nutritionists of it, they know it. But it's corporate. It's a company. And why is science so involved in those sorts of diets? Because they're basically taking waste products and doing science to see if they can sustain life. So yeah, you need a lot of research. You need a lot of trials. If I'm going to feed a cat sawdust, how much sawdust can I feed them before they die? And so, yes, you need a lot of research with that. Do you need as much research with wholesome food? You don't. I mean, the truth, I hate to say the obvious, but the obvious is we eat lunch and we don't have it scientifically developed every single day. And maybe you do, but I don't. I just eat a sandwich and know that my body knows what to do with all the micronutrients in that sandwich to make me feel and heal and live a vibrant life. And the same thing holds true for our pets.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I think what you spoke about before, I'd like to reiterate that prescription pet foods, most of the time, the pet will stay on those foods for their life and entirety. And to my understanding, pets are the only creature that when they're on a prescription diet or a diet specific for a disease or condition are advised by their medical professional to stay on that forever. Like I know that there are humans that have certain dietary restrictions or needs for periods of time. Maybe they are limited in even some nutrients to help them get over whatever they're suffering with. But the doctors will always recommend that when they've resolved to then go back to a whole fresh food diet that's optimal for them. So I find it interesting that it's, to me, it just screams money, 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 the more they're on it, because you mentioned earlier that these traditional prescription pet foods are really inexpensive to formulate in terms of the ingredients. Corn, soy, wheat, gluten, cellulose, sawdust are inexpensive ingredients, but these are not inexpensive foods. These cost a lot of money. They cost vet visits, and then the actual bag themselves are very expensive.
Yep, I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so one thing, let's see here, I wanted to kind of cover was learning more about the specific diets that Medicus offers. We talked about kidney. Could you talk about a couple of the others that you offer for people that their dog might be suffering?
Yeah, absolutely. The way that I look at it is twofold. One, we want to restrict nutrients. So for the the 2 kidney diets. So the kitty kidney diet and the dog kidney diet, it's restricting phosphorus. For the bladder diet for cats, it's restricting phosphorus and magnesium and calcium and a lot of minerals that allow these crystals and stones to develop. But the other perspective on Medicus diet is to provide our pets with the healthiest, cleanest food so that they can heal their body. So we have a sensitive stomach diet, and we have a skin diet. We have 2 amazing cancer diets. And the 2 cancer diets are just the highest quality human grade food. So food you would make yourself, but we put it into a freeze-dried format with organs, and then we flooded it with antioxidants, because antioxidants are so important when a pet does have cancer. And then we flooded it with omega-3 fatty acids. So for Medicus, you got the ones where we're restricting nutrients to lighten the load. And then we also have the ones where we're just flooding the body with good, healthy, vibrant things. So the cancer diet isn't about curing cancer. The cancer diet is providing wholesome, clean nutrients to have the ultimate best health possible, so that the body's immune system can function against the cancer, or can help to combat the cancer cells that might be spreading. So it's not about preventing cancer. It's about providing the absolute best nutrition possible so that the immune system can do other things. So it's really, I mean, if one of the things that I think is really important, and this is going to be a new thing that you're not going to talk about, or you probably haven't heard much about, is biogenic amines. And biogenic amines are chemicals that happen when meat is spoiling. So it's cardavicin and putrescin, and these chemicals that develop as meat's rotting. And there's a thing called a biogenic amine index, where you can test for these levels of the meat, and they can't be cooked out of them. They'll still be there even if they're cooked. And healthy, vibrant meat has a really low biogenic amine, meaning they don't have a lot of this toxins there or chemicals that develop as they rot. As the meat starts to break down and starts to rot, now all of a sudden the biogenic amines can be up in the 50 range versus less than 1. So less than 5 is considered vibrant, healthy food. Greater than 50 is considered rotten food. And then there's everything in between. So the 4D meats and the rendered meat meals and all of that are in there. The beauty is, you might trust me, and I might say that this is the best quality meat. It's a human grade facility. We use human grade meat. I have a beautiful picture on my box. That doesn't mean shit. Oh,
Yep, you're good. Yeah, we're safe here. I love it.
That doesn't mean anything, right? Because as by the FDA's regulations, as long as there's the DNA of chicken, you can put a beautiful piece of chicken breast on there as if that is really what's in the food, and it's not. So a biogenic amine, what I love about that is it's quantitative. It's a number that tells you the quality of the meat that's used in that food. And if you and I, we showed by example, come to my website. I'll show you our biogenic amines. They're all really, really low, which proves, not just me saying it, trust but verify, proves that it's of the highest quality meat that you would expect it to be. So I'm hoping that enough really good pet food companies will go, yeah, I'll test mine too. And that would really be a number that pet parents could hang their hat on.
That's pretty powerful, because again, that's something I talk about quite a bit in my content, which is that what you see on the packaging and even what you see at face value on the ingredient deck can be highly misleading and really confusing. And that's, in my opinion, done on purpose, done by design, because it's easier to convince us, and I've been there too, so there's no shame, but that the big chick it says like first ingredient is chicken, but who knows the quality, and like you said, the quality of the chicken, where it's sourcing is important. And I am fascinated by this new, I guess, way to look at pet food. How did you learn about this?
It's interesting. It actually it came about from the seafood industry, because in the seafood industry, seafood's kind of stinky. So you couldn't, so it was harder to say, was this seafood rotten or is this seafood still okay? And that's where the biogenic, so if you're buying seafood, you're going on your certificate of analysis, you're going to get a biogenic amine. But in meat, we should be able to see if and smell if it's getting rotten. But once it's heavily processed, once it's put into a kibble, and once we put all sorts of palatants and fats on the surface of it, we have no idea if it's, and unfortunately, as Susan Thixton says, feed grade is completely fine. So 4D meats, completely fine. Dead, down, diseased, all totally fine. Rendered meat meals, totally fine. Meat and bone meal, totally fine. So the FDA is not saying that it has to be food, it has to be human grade, or it has to be food grade. Quite honestly, pets have become the garbage can, the waste bucket for the human meat industry. And that's a whole discussion in
That's gonna
itself.
have to be live number 2 for sure to go over that, because there's a lot. You're sparking a lot of emotions, and I'm like, "Ooh, we could go down this trail," but I
Right,
don't wanna go over time.
yeah, it's a whole thing in itself. But I think what's important is that the pet parent knows that when it says chicken, it could be anything from beautiful, wholesome chicken breasts like we would use, and we prove it with the biogenic amines, or it could be all the way down to meat and bone meal that's just a plethora of other dead stuff that goes in.
Yeah.
That's what
I know. That's you're saying it nicely. Um, gosh.
I'm trying to be diplomatic, but on the other hand, I want to say it because when I walk down the grocery store aisle of the pet food section, there are literally times I look at a bag of stuff and I'm like, this does look really good. And I know, and I'm in the industry, so I know what happens. But even I look at these beautiful bags and be like, wow, this doesn't look that bad. And then I'm like, of course it is.
Yeah. Well, what I always say is that the kind of big pet food, probably the most brilliant marketers of all time. And that's not a good thing, but they've been able to infiltrate vet schools, and the smartest people some of the smartest people in the world, and really convince these intelligent human beings that these diets are optimal, and they really lead first with, well, we do all this research. And I love what you said earlier, which is, well, of course you need to do research. You're trying to show or demonstrate that a cat or a dog can survive on sawdust or high amounts of corn. So I really love that. I'm gonna have to take that, use it.
Please do.
So, okay, so really to kind of summarize on Medicus, I pulled this up. Rodney Habib shared this on social media. If you guys are not following Rodney, he's an incredible friend and mentor of yours. But I thought this was a good way to kind of summarize what the future looks like, right? Like this is kind of what, Royal Canin and this isn't, by the way, this isn't to brand bash by any means. It's really just to demonstrate that the way that we are feeding our pets, whether they're healthy pets today and we want to keep them that way, or they are suffering from a condition and we want to help them, is changing before our eyes. And people like you, Dr. Besant, with like this social media post is such a great example of that. You are a trailblazer in this, and it's pretty incredible. The other thing I want to take just a second to highlight is that, again, we talked about this before, but your diet is also freeze dried. And I think that's important to really highlight in that every other prescription pet food on the diet or in every other prescription pet food on the market is either a highly processed extruded kibble, or I think there are some canned options. But again, highly, highly, highly processed, which just like for humans is not optimal. You can't convince me that that's optimal for dogs, but you took it a step further and you're like, I'm going to process this food as minimally as possible. But also, my assumption is that you wanted it to be something that was easy for the pet parent that's already stressing about everything else going on to feed. Can you tell me a little bit about why freeze drying, in your opinion, is better than a highly extruded traditional kibble?
Absolutely. Freeze drying is a process of sublimation that we take the frozen meat and then put it in a chamber that's vacuated, and then the moisture vaporizes and goes to these really cold plates alongside the chamber. So it goes from frozen to dry and skips the wet phase. So the beauty is it's freeze drying is just like taking a sponge and taking the moisture out. So now it's lightweight like popcorn. It preserves 97% of the nutrients. And that's huge. None of the nutrients are being damaged. And a lot of the acrylamides and AGEs and things that happen within food when it's heavily processed does not happen with freeze dried, because freeze dried is going from minus 65 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it starts going up and up and up in temperature just enough to vaporize the next layer within each one of the nuggets. So I saw this as a veterinarian and saw that animals who ate freeze-dried food did really well. And I felt like if the average person, if we could get over the ick factor, not having fresh organs and meats sitting in your refrigerator, if we could get over the ick factor, everybody's perfectly happy to scoop and serve. They're perfectly happy to buy a bag of it and have it in their cupboard. Well, that's exactly what happens with freeze-dried. So I invested really heavily in freeze-dried, and now I own the 2 facilities that make it. So we have a 45,000 square foot facility and a 85,000 square foot facility. We have about 40 amazingly wonderful people that work with us, and we literally make it all ourselves.
Yeah, which, again, for those of you that have followed me for a length of time, you know that I've been in the pet industry pretty intimately. So the fact that you have all of your manufacturing in-house is quite frankly unheard of. And what this means is that you have complete control and transparency of everything that goes into the pet food. And again, that is uncommon. So that just speaks volumes to the quality of what you're doing and your passion to it. So again, thank you for doing that. I probably say thank you like 3 times here because I think this is powerful. And then we touched on this before, but I do want to make sure we talk about your other project, which has been around longer and is an incredible freeze-dried food for everyday diet, where you said this before, but Medicus was developed for, as you said, as a resource for pet parents to kind of resolve or maybe put in remission or to help support the dog that might be suffering from a disease or a condition. But eventually, it sounds like your goal is for those dogs to be able to get back onto an everyday, complete and balanced whole food diet. And you have, I'll put it on the screen here, the Simple Food Project. Again, all links for all of this will be linked below in the comments, etc. So you can check it out after this. But this is, again, an abnormal food. And I say that because you only, I'm going to pull up here and then I'll let you talk about it, but I'm fangirling here. Again, it's completely human grade. It's sourced responsibly, which you never see. It's freeze dried. We just talked about why that's valuable. And you're using real whole food ingredients. Look at this on the beef and salmon, grass raised beef, wild caught salmon, grass raised beef liver. You've got some flaxseed. You've organic produce. This is the pet parent 2.0's dream. And I think it's one of the most underrated freeze dried foods on the market today. Like, I'm so excited to help kind of elevate this because this is such a fantastic food. And I think you even recently launched a puppy recipe formula as well. So you really are addressing dogs at all life stages with your companies, as well as all health stages, if you will.
Yeah, the Simple Food Project came about in that, what would I feed my dog? And here's what I would want to feed my dog. It's species appropriate, really high levels of meats and organs. So when you go to our website, we literally tell you how much meat, how much organ, organic fruits and vegetables, because I appreciate how important it is that it's clean. And then we have the freeze-dried nuggets, and then we have dehydrated nuggets. So can you throw that slide back up of the front of the boxes?
Yes.
So when you see that picture in the front, that's literally the food so it's a pictorial ingredient deck.
I love it.
Literally the food that is going into this. And we take all of those beautiful whole foods, grind it up, make them into nuggets, and then 2/3 of the nuggets go into our freeze dryers, and 1/3 of the nuggets go into our dehydrator. And a dehydrator is to give that crunch that dogs need. So if we're most trying to simulate what would happen in the real world, a dog would eat an animal and they would eat the bones, and crunching of bones has such a stimulatory effect on their brain. And I feel like that's one of the reasons that kibble gets away with what they get away with, because dogs love crunch. So what I found is dogs would eat a mushy food for a while, but then they're like, because that's not really what they would eat in the wild. So we added the dry roasted nuggets as for crunch. So it's all the same ingredients, just processed just a little bit differently. And for that one, it's still low temperature, but it's long duration, low temperature, and high airflow. So kind of like any air dried.
Like a air dried or baked almost.
Right, but lower temperatures, so we're not damaging all the vitamins and minerals.
That's incredible. I actually didn't realize that it had I fed it, but I wasn't paying attention to that. That's actually brilliant because you are right, especially for picky dogs. If anybody listening to this or watching this has a picky dog, that has to be a go-to to try because that crunch, my Labrador is like, he loves that
Yes,
crunch, right?
exactly.
And I personally, like, I love feeding my dogs raw meaty bones, like raw chicken feet or
They
raw
love
turkey necks. Yeah, they love it. But this is just an easy kind of scoop and serve. And do you still recommend to rehydrate it like you would just a traditional freeze-dried only food?
Well, the beauty is, so then we have the freeze-dried nuggets and the dehydrated nuggets, but then we also have diced organ meat as separate pieces, and separate pieces of like cranberry or apples or carrots, so you can see the real produce. So when you add moisture back to it and mix it up, it makes this beautiful gravy, and the diced organ meat blows up to being exactly like it was before we dried it, but the crunchy part still stays crunchy. And so for picky dogs, there's so many ways you could do it. You could add moisture and just let it sit for 30 seconds. You could add warm chicken broth and let it sit for 20 minutes. There's all different ways you can utilize it, with the idea that they need some variety. Like, what's the most common thing that you hear from pet parents is they ate it for a while and now they refuse it. They're bored. So move on to the next thing. So it's kind of a way to look at what they genetically would do.
Yeah. So would you, if a pet parent was feeding an ultra processed, highly processed kibble today, but they wanted to start adding this as a topper,
Yeah,
would that be okay in your opinion?
100%, because it's complete and balanced. But the difference is when you look at our ingredient deck, the vitamins and the minerals are coming from the food. So we're not adding this huge pile of vitamins and minerals you would see it at the bottom of the ingredient deck. It's not there because you're getting vitamin A from the pumpkin, and you're getting quercetin from the apples, and you're getting all of the vitamins and the minerals that you need from the whole food itself.
Yeah.
So it's complete and balanced. So if you add it to a kibble, so you just say, what I can afford is to do a topper. Great. You're adding a complete and balanced kibble, and then you're adding complete and balanced freeze dried. Perfect. And I would say anything you do raises the plane of nutrition. So if it's sprinkling freeze dried meat on the top, you've raised their plane of nutrition. If it's adding it as a topper, using it as treats, or feeding it as a whole meal, anything you do is going to raise the plane of nutrition. If you eat that salad, even though you ate McDonald's, you have raised your plane of nutrition. And I say that's what you do every day, is just try to do the best you can.
Yeah. One thing I always try to share in my channel and my platforms is just do the best you can, feed the dog in front of you, but whenever possible, go one step fresher. And I define fresher as maybe a little bit less processed, or maybe some fewer food that has fewer ingredients, or adding something fresh to the bowl. Because as you reiterated, a little bit can go a long way when it comes to health benefits of feeding our dogs even just a little bit of fresher, real, whole food. So for those of you watching that are overwhelmed and like, okay, this all sounds good, but my dog has a sensitive stomach, and which I know Medicus has a sensitive stomach,
Yeah.
line that people could experiment with, I think is exciting. But people watching this, I feel like are going to start thinking, okay, this all sounds great. I want to feed my dog better, but Baxter has a overly sensitive stomach and I have limited time. I saw this one social media post that said, don't feed this. And my vet's saying this, I'm feeling overwhelmed. So if you have a pet parent that's feeling that way right now, what would you say to them?
Just kind of dip your toes in, do a little bit. If you're eating healthy, wholesome chicken breast tonight and you have some broccoli and some green beans, your dog could absolutely have that. And that would be one way to raise their plane of nutrition. If you're pay attention at the grocery store, there's always times that there's really good, wholesome, healthy meat that's available that you could purchase, that you could add to your dog's diet as well. So anything you do is going to raise their plane of nutrition. Blueberries, cranberries, any berry is a superfood that is really, really great for dogs. So I would say start out slowly and start adding things in. And then as you get more comfortable with it, you will see the benefits of it. And that'll just reiterate that, yeah, I'm on the right path. And yeah, Rachel's advice is true. And I should do this. And what I found years and years ago as a veterinarian, talking about Joanne, the lady who was smoking and eating the Snickers bar. Once I saw how well her dogs did, I started my dogs on raw food as well. So way, way, way in the beginning. And I was shocked how quickly they got better.
Yeah.
Like I thought as a veterinarian, it would take 6 months to see a difference. Weeks, sometimes within a week, they are happier and more vibrant, and their coat color, the richness and the dark, beautiful colors of their coat start to come out within weeks of going on healthy food. So I would say the little bit that you dip your toe in and start feeding healthy food, you will get rewarded. You will see that your dog is feeling better and loving their food again. These are scavenger carnivores. So when a scavenger carnivore won't eat it, that's bad, because they want to eat roadkill. They want to eat anything. That's their job, is they have this amazing sense of smell, and they know when there's still good food product in it. And so when they won't eat their kibble and you can just leave it sitting out there all day, that's a good indication of common sense that, and then once you start feeding real food, they go nuts for it. And I'm sure your Labrador is just like, I love food and I love my dinner time is the greatest ever. And like my dogs, they hold me to it. Like,
Yeah.
It's 4:32 and we eat at 4:30.
Come on, mom, feed me. Yeah, I actually had to start randomizing their feeding time because they knew exactly when it was time. So now sometimes dinner
Yeah,
happens at
probably
3,
that's
sometimes at
smart.
7. Yeah, yeah, because they get very demanding, and I'm just like, goodness gracious. So absolutely, I can relate. Dr. Besson, this has been fantastic. And just listening to you speak, I can feel your passion. It's radiating and it's inspiring me, and I want to do this again with you because I think there's so much more we can talk about, and I think the value that you've brought today has been incredible. So for those watching, just please make sure that you follow Dr. Besant, all of her socials for Medicus, her page, as well as Simple Food Project will all be linked below. And we didn't get a chance to talk about Herb Smith, but Herb Smith, I'll link it below, has incredible supplements that you can explore for your dogs and get pretty personalized recommendations too if your dog is suffering. So that is, if you maybe chronic loose stool, I hear that a lot. Go there and check it out. There's a little quiz you can do.
And I
But
literally every day
go
read
through.
those quizzes and make the recommendation. It's literally me that's making these recommendations. And sometimes I'll ask other questions like, tell me more about blah, blah, blah. And that'll help me direct them even better. And sometimes I'm saying, you need to find a veterinary chiropractor in your area, or you need to try a fecal microbiome transfer. I mean, I will give you honest opinions. Sometimes I would use this, and this as products, but other times it's honest veterinary opinions that you will get for free. I'm just happy to do it.
Yeah, that's incredible. Do you take any virtual clients, or have you kind of slowed that down or anything? I
Yeah,
know people are asking, so
yeah, I don't.
okay. I figured because there's no way to manage that. But what's
Yeah,
great is that you offer all tons of content and products, and you meet with people like myself and share your knowledge completely free.
yeah.
And that's pretty powerful. So I'm very thankful for that. I'm thankful that you came today. Are there any lasting things you want to make sure you say before we sign off today?
I would say that I think that we're at a precipice of figuring out that we don't have to tolerate chronic disease, that the dogs don't need to just live to 8, 9, 10 years of age, and that's crazy. And if we just use common sense, all the propaganda and the craziness of it kind of goes away. And when you know in your heart and your intuition that feeding blueberries is going to be helpful, yeah, do it.
Yeah. I say this. I had a friend tell me that they have a human kid, and the mother she was really they were trying to figure out what was wrong with the kid. The kid's okay, but the pediatrician told her, he's like, bring all your questions, bring the research you're seeing, because yes, I am the doctor, and I have years of experience, but nobody knows your child better than the mom, than you. And I think the same goes for pet parents, is that nobody knows your dog or your cat better than you. And I want people watching this to feel empowered to make decisions that feel good. And it's not that you should ignore what your vet's saying, but if your vet is suggesting things that you're uncomfortable with, feel safe and comfortable to go get a second or third vet opinion. I prefer vets like you, Dr. Besant, that are more integrative, holistic, which those of you watching, you can go to ahvma.org. They have a find a pet section, and there's a growing body of vets that are just doing virtual visits instead of the in-person. So there's a lot of resources out there for you to really feel confident about the choices you're making. So with that, thank you again, Dr. Bessett. Thank you to everyone watching, for really dedicating your life and your time to giving your dog and your cat the happiest and healthiest